Lee, you're Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. You've got to support this policy. You're bound by collective responsibility. Do you, in your heart of heart, think that this time the answer is there?
This is our last chance, Jacob. I think this is. I spoke to Rishi yesterday and spoke to Suella about this legislation. This is what we've wanted all along. You know, the idea that people can come here illegally and then get ferried off to hotels is beyond the pale for me. What we've been asking for since we got to this place, or that place there, is if you arrive here illegally, then you have no right to claim asylum, then you are deported to a third country as soon as possible. If we get that right, and we can fight off the ECHR, and that place remains sovereign, because that's the place over there that makes our laws, we should back that 100%. Get a little bit grumpy sometimes when we keep pandering to the ECHR, and a lot of my colleagues do. I hope they've got it right this time, because, like you say, we've marched up the hill before, and we've come back down again. But like I say, in this legislation, we've got bits in there that we've not had before, and fair play to Rishi and fair play to Suella.
They've gone much further than expected. But, Stephen, do you think this is practical, or that we'll get bound up in endless litigation in the European Court?
I don't think it's a question of litigation. This is just a gimmick. There's a huge lacuna in the middle of this. Look, what happens is, just think about the practicalities of it. Firstly, they're saying that they won't deport children until they're 18. So the idea of somebody waiting till they're 18 and then being deported is like the old days of the death penalty, when you had to wait till you're 18 before you got swung off. But look, the real problem here is you're creating a vast world of people in limbo. Because somebody comes here from Afghanistan, from Iran, and we say, no, you have no right to be here. Where are you going to deport them to? Rwanda is a no-starter. The Israelis tried it. They sent 4,000 people there. And how long did it last? It lasted 3 months. It was just a nonsense. So we've got these people...
Why is Rwanda a non-starter? That we're going to be giving them financial support, we're going to be paying for them to take refugees from the UK?
Rwanda is an area which has been racked by civil war and internal genocide in very recent, in our lifetime, in my time when I was in Parliament. It is not a safe place, and anyone who says it is, you know, would actually go and stay there. The Israeli experience was that what happened was that people were getting murdered and they were murdering. It just simply didn't work. But, you know, can you...
Well, if they're murdering, if they're going there and murdering, we certainly don't want these people in the United Kingdom, do we?
I couldn't agree more. But do we honestly really think...
Can we just
try and go back to the questions that you raised right at the beginning, Jacob? The real problem is, first, this is you, and it's you, Jacob, Conservative MPs. The Human Rights Act, which incorporated the European Convention into British law, was a catastrophe from the very beginning. You have been in power 12 years. You have not had the courage to do anything about it. So there is a huge burden, and I think, of guilt that hangs over you. You are actually in government. The fact that it's taken 12 years to recognise this problem, because the situation over the notion of universal human rights, first is it's an intellectual nonsense. When did universal human rights come into existence? It was described as long ago as the 19th century, late 18th century, by Jeremy Bentham. Human rights are nonsense on stilts. But they're disastrous nonsense, because what they do is they give incompatible rights to incompatible people. The result is, therefore, that these rights can only be arbitrated between by judges, when, as you said, proper decisions should actually be taken with the democratic authority of Parliament. In other words, there is a fundamental intellectual catastrophe at the heart of all this.
Contention between human rights and democracy. I don't disagree with that. I do disagree that we've had 12 years to do it, because as long as we were in the European Union, we could not resile from the power of the European Court of Human Rights. That was a treaty obligation. But, Lee, I want to bring you back in on this, because do you think there is a majority in the Conservative Party for us to carve out bits of the convention?
I think there is, Jacob. We've got an election looming in 18 months' time, and this could be our... And, you know, like the Brexit election was in 2019, this is a clear choice with the electorate, and it's a clear choice with the members over there, and I think the British public have got us on notice. And if we get it right, I think we've got a really good chance of winning the next general election.
But, Lee, isn't there a real problem that there is a very important section of the Conservative Party which is fully committed to the notion of the rules-based international order? Because, remember, all of this comes in part of the catastrophic post-war settlement. The reason why you have the conventions, both the United Nations conventions and the European ones, is they're essentially designed to justify the the trials of the Nazis. This is why you come up with this notion of something that goes beyond state power. Because, what the Nazis...
you have to control state power.
Pardon?
You have to control state power because the Nazis...
What you do, you invent something that's in theory supranational.
I want to bring Stephen in because the Labour Party's always had an internationalist view.
Yeah.
It's long been part of its principle. How hard will Labour fight back on this? Will you go into an election, do you think, saying human rights are more important than deporting illegal asylum?
No, of course not, because that's what the Conservatives will say, and if I was in their position, I would say the same thing. But what we will say is pretty much what Yvette Cooper said today, that this simply doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. If you've got these people who you then allow them in the country, instead of doing the sensible thing and actually keeping them in areas, in enclosed areas where you can actually process them, and then if they have to go back to Tirana, by heaven, get them on the next boat back to Tirana. But the rest of the people...
Sorry, now, Stephen, you're giving the game away. Yeah. What you're saying is that, in fact, Labour is even more in favour of the rapid removal of immigrants than the Conservatives.
No.
Is that serious? No. Well, right, sorry. I'm just pointing out that I used to many years ago when I was teaching you. There's an
That's one upmanship.
Absolutely fundamental contradiction in what you're saying.
Stephen, did you learn much from him, or did you just get lectured?
He remembered very little, I think, is the answer. Yes.
Well, no, listen, let's get things absolutely straight. We're
trying to.
Some scroats from Albania who come here purely because they can work in the black economy here, because we don't have ID cards, we don't have any way of knowing where they are. We ask them to go and stay in a hotel and rely on their inherent honesty to stay there. That is an utter nonsense. They should be going. But
we can't lock them up straight away.
I'm sorry, we can. We shouldn't let them off the hook.
All right. Well, I think you're advocating Tory policy. But Lee, you're going to have plenty of time to talk about this because you're going to be hosting your own show on GBNews, which is really exciting.
My own show, and yes, I am. I'm looking forward to it, Jacob. It's going to be next month. We start. It's going to be Friday night, 7 p.m. So that's prime time, I think, Friday. We're going to have lots of sensible guests on there. Might even have the odd socialist on there as well. I might even get Stephen on there and carry this debate on. And I just want to come back, actually, because at least we've got a plan now, Stephen. Yeah. We've got a plan to try and sort this out. The Labour Party have got no plan, and they've opposed us at every single stage in the Borders Bill, now the Immigration Bill. And I think coming into the next election, they've got a tough job on their hands.
What do you think about ID cards, Lee?
Okay, I think we're going to have to...
I don't believe in ID cards.
You're going to have to come in on Lee's programme and discuss this further.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. It is a great panel, isn't it? With Lee, David and Stephen.